Doom Vivamos Vivamus Epicureans. This is the BCE Comics Pod one-shot edition. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf. How's it going, Nick?
I'm doing well, particularly since we are participating in Kurtis Findlay's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, and this one-shot is going to be our brief thoughts on today's issue, which is Uncanny X-Men number 192, Fun and Games. Alright, so as Kitty and Wolverine are returning from Japan because of the miniseries, Professor Xavier and Storm, who did not leave after all because New York turned into, Hyperborea or whatever. Anyway, Storm's still sticking around, at least for now. They have taken Illyana and Rachel to meet Kitty and Wolverine at the airport. Alright, so they're off doing that. Back at the mansion, Nightcrawler, who's now acting as the new team leader, is having a training session with Colossus and Rogue, and he is mopping the floor with the two of them. After some shenanigans, Rogue flies off to an empty mansion, not the X-Mansion, but a different one, where the techno-organic alien's father, the father of Warlock, a guy named Magus, lands. Alright, so we get a good brawl between both Rogue and Nightcrawler, destroying some of Magus's limbs, but the powerful alien leaves with the promise that he will return for his son Warlock. At the end, some months later, Professor Xavier leaves the class that he's been teaching at Columbia University, and he is attacked by anti-mutant bigots. The anti-mutant sentiment sure seems to be growing. Alright, Stojr, what are your thoughts here?
I enjoy these mostly down issues. Like, there's some action here. Obviously, they're fighting the alien Magus. I hate that name, by the way. I just want to say Magneto or Magnus or something like that. But don't make it so close. Come up with another name. But whatever, it's fine. I think that this issue kind of really showcases like Colossus's like super Russian costume, in my opinion, like where his costume has kind of like the line across it and down the side. You can see that obviously on the first page, the splash page, very clearly. Not my favorite version of his costume, but I do like that they switch it up a little bit and give him something a little bit different. Just kind of, little interesting side note there. I like that you're seeing like Nightcrawler be a little bit more of like trying to be a team leader and things like that, and knowing and reading ahead and his sort of role on Excalibur when we get there, and what the future leads for him. It's good to see him stepping into that role, with Storm exiting and really having no clear leader on the team right now. It's also good to see Rogue interacting with the different characters here and developing some relationships, even if it is, not always on the best path, so to speak. I like the little glimpses into the future that we're getting here, with Rachel Summers and Kitty. I especially enjoy that because I didn't always read. It didn't always like follow Rachel's story, so I kind of knew her from later on, but like never really fleshed out her origin. And even though I didn't own this epic since 2015. I bought this used, right? So, so I hadn't read this cover to cover, and her origin is sort of like spaced out in like pages here and there, right? So I had to go back and look at one of the New Mutants issues. I think we talked about this before, and she's only there for like a page or two, and then you see her kind of jump over into the X-Men, and I think it's the same issue that she interacts with Selene. So there's all this like breadcrumb dropping that like you don't necessarily see it all together. If there was like a Rachel Summer epic collection, you'd string all those together and there'd be a lot of it'd be like the beginning of West Coast Avengers, where it's like all those like pages of Hawkeye and Mockingbird across various issues where you're just getting a couple scenes. So it's good to fill in those gaps as we're reading through this, but it's hard to keep up at the same time because you have to jump around to a bunch of different spots. Magus is like kind of interesting villain. It's good that, he's like overpowered for them. I like that he kind of has this like weird dynamic at the end of like I like these guys. I'm gonna have to kill my son anyway, though. It's weird. It's kind of alien. I'm interested in what the connection to what I know of much later of the Phalanx is, right? This all looks very much like the Phalanx, and we probably won't get that connection for another 120 issues or something like that until they really are revealed and kind of connect back to that stuff. Maybe a little bit sooner, but for me, like the interesting part about Warlock and Magus is where I know they're going to take it. Like I'm not super interested in these characters other than like the sort of the orange origins of a villain that I think is kind of cool later on. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I have kind of similar feelings and probably some similar nostalgia because I do remember the Phalanx Covenant storyline from the '90s as being like one of the first big X-Men things I kind of latched onto, and I've always had a fondness for Warlock or the design of Warlock and thus his father. So seeing these techno-organic aliens, it's just neat. It's weird. It's different, and I appreciate that. So again, this is a nice one and done issue. It's setting up some bigger things later, so I appreciate that. And as you say, the interactions between the characters is fun to see. It's nice to see Nightcrawler really kicking butt too, like kind of what we saw with the Kitty Pryde Wolverine miniseries, that they upgraded her so she could be more offensive. This. Well, actually, not even that. That's not even what I mean. But, like, we saw how powerful Kitty Pryde could be, how she could sneak onto an airplane and no one could stop her. I feel like this is the first time we really just see how Nightcrawler could take out the X-Men by himself if he wanted to, right? He has the ability to do that, particularly now that it's a lot easier for him to teleport while carrying someone. That was a limitation he had earlier. I have no idea why Colossus is pulling a plug out of this lake, but, whatever. So anyway, I thought that was good and fun to see. So nice easy issue. Looking forward to where we go.
Was your exposure to Warlock or your nostalgia for actual Warlock from New Mutants, or did you were you more like me, like know of him through Douglock?
Okay, so I think it was a little bit of a combination because yes, Douglock, that was part of the Phalanx Covenant thing, right?
He was in there, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And I think that's where a lot of that comes to play. And then he's in Excalibur, through the end of that run.
yeah. So I remember picking up the Phalanx Covenant issues, that big crossover thing, when I was young and reading through those and being really interested. And I had a really good used bookstore in my town growing up that had a bunch of back issues for cheap. So I loaded up on a bunch of those things and read just kind of various stuff from older times. So I had some of the New Mutants issues. I didn't fully get the story or quite understand Doug Ramsey other than what happens to him, and I'm not going to say that because there might be people watching this who haven't read that. So I knew what happened to Doug, and I wanted to figure out what happens, what led up to that, and why that was such a big deal for the mutants. And I never quite pieced that together, but yeah, I with what I read, I kind of enjoyed this weird techno-organic alien, and then it led to this big event that seemed so important in my mind at the time, but looking back on it, maybe not quite so much, but still, well, I guess important in the fact
Actually,
that,
I think it's a great event,
yeah,
and it kicked off Generation
I
X.
was gonna say that. Yep.
Yeah, and it, what I liked about that crossover is that it was broken up into smaller parts. So the X-Men parts were kind of by themselves, and then you had, I think it was Excalibur and X Factor and probably X Force, and then you had Cable and
Cable and
Wolverine
Wolverine.
that was
Yep.
kind of off on their own, and they weren't all as equally good, but I actually really liked the Excalibur issues. I think they had some strong art and the way they handled it, and that crossover really kind of does tie back to some of the original X-Men issues that we started to review, because some of like that Stephen Langstrom character and stuff like that, he gets all tied up into this stuff, and he plays a big part in X Factor, I think, also, if I remember correctly. There's a second character in there too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting his name. That was definitely an Excalibur. Cameron Hodge,
Yeah.
that's in X Factor, but Stephen Langstrom is part of that too. And even some of the lead-in issues of, there's a Yukio issue with the Phalanx and Storm, drawn by Joe Madura, right before all of this. That's pretty good. So yeah, there's I think that they did a really good job with that crossover. Maybe that's 90% nostalgia talking, but I got some real fond thoughts of the Phalanx from that time period, at least.
I know we've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but it's quasi-related because of the Phalanx and Warlock's dad in this issue. Stojr has... I don't have access to my epics. They're not on a convenient shelf like you've got. Has the Phalanx crossover been collected in the epics yet? Do we have those?
Yeah. So Generation X Volume 1 gives you all the X-Men issues because that's the introduction. I think in both X Factor and in Excalibur, they've collected the crossover there. I'm trying to maybe not in Excalibur. The Excalibur issue would be in the X Factor volume, and then the one of the volumes of Excalibur that comes out. Maybe I'm not entirely sure on that, but I don't want to stall and keep the things going. And then in one of the Wolverine epics, there should be is the Cable stuff because there are no Cable issues.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the entire crossover is covered.
I just remember when I was a kid, I had those organized in a certain way of how to tell the story, and I read through it like 4 or 5 times in my particular organization. Excuse me, but I don't remember what that organization was anymore, and if it's, how they would map it today.
Yeah, and they had some like unique covers, like they had that like kind of holographic like the thing that went down the side. Sort of almost metallic looking, and I had bought them while I was down the shore on vacation, so I was actually like flipping through them on the beach, and I remember like reading them from the first time. But yeah, the Cable issue is in the Wolverine epic To the Bone. I found that one, so Cable 16 is in here and goes through that part of the crossover.
Okay.
So yeah, there's X Factor, Generation X Volume 1, and Wolverine. I think those 3 epics give you the whole thing.
Okay. But we need 3 epics. Well, that's okay.
But the whole storyline, it's not like Executioner Song where it's all like you have to hop out to everything.
Yeah.
Like they kind of, the X-Men issues are all about Generation X and fighting the Phalanx that are involved there. The Cable and Wolverine is all about freeing the X-Men that are captured. And then the X Factor or X Force or Excalibur, those 3 are all about something else completely different. So it's almost like a war on 3 different fronts, but they're not actually interacting with each other that much, if at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I do remember that. I just liked having them all in one place, but that's okay. That's a personal preference. All right, back to this issue. Stojr, any other final thoughts on Uncanny X-Men number whatever this is, 192?
192. Nope, all good.
All right, great. Well, once again, if you've enjoyed our thoughts, follow us on YouTube. We're going to read, rate, and review a full big collected edition comic once a month, plus these daily one-shots. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time.